Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tadasata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Sri Purushottam Chitra Ki Sri Ganga Mai Ki Jai Sri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, Text 48. Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Krudahim eva pavakaha. Pragdishtam Rakshap Purushena Mahatmana Tadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha. Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha. Ladies? Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha. Ladies? Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha. Pragdishtam Vricharakshayam Purushena Mahatmana Dadaha Krityam Tam Chakram Kudahim eva pavakaha. Pragdishtam. As previously arranged. Vricharakshayam. For the protection of his servants. Purushena. By the Supreme Person. Mahatmana. By the Supersoul. Tadaha. Burnt to ashes. Krityam. That created demon. Tam. Him. Chakram. The disc. Krudha. Angry. Ahim. A serpent. Eva. Like. Pavakaha. Fire. Ruji, can you just close the doors to the cupboard, please? Yeah, that's better. As fire in the forest immediately burns to ashes an angry snake, so, by the previous order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, immediately burnt to ashes the created demon to protect the Lord's devotee. Purport. As a pure devotee, Maharaj Ambarish, although in such danger, did not move an inch from his position, nor did he request the Supreme Personality of Godhead to give him protection. He was fixed in understanding, and it was certain that he was simply thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the core of his heart. A devotee is never fearful of his death, for he meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead always, not for any material profit, but as his duty. The Lord, however, knows how to protect his devotee, as indicated by the words prag dishtam. The Lord knew everything. Okay. Therefore, before anything happened, he had already arranged for his chakra to protect Maharaj Ambarisha. This protection is offered to a devotee even from the very beginning of his devotional service. Konteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranasyati. Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 31. If one simply begins devotional service, he is immediately protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita chapter 18, text 66. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. Protection begins immediately. The Lord is so kind and merciful that he gives the devotee proper guidance and all protection, and thus the devotee very peacefully makes solid progress in Krishna consciousness without outward disturbances. A serpent may be very angry and ready to bite, but the furious snake is helpless when faced by a blazing fire in the forest. Although an enemy of a devotee may be very strong, he is compared to an angry serpent before the fire of devotional service. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Kananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kada Mahayam Dadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Karim Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Ditainam. Okay. So, Maharaj Ambarish is being cursed by Durvasa Muni, and the first challenge to Ambarish is the creation of this demon. And what happens? The demon is destroyed by the Sudarshan Chakra. Ultimately by who? It's mentioned here. Purushena Maha Atmana. Right? Purushena, Prabhupada translates here as by the Supreme Person. Which is interesting because Purushena by itself just means person, right? But how do we know it's the Supreme Person? Maha Atmana, right? The greatest person, the super soul here, Maha Atmana. And it's mentioned Prakdishtam, or Prabhupada mentions in the purport, Pragdishtam. And that's translated as Prak means prior or before. Let's have a look what Dishtam means. Dishtam means as directed, or Dishtam also here, according to destiny. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport the Lord knows everything. And he'd already made an arrangement, has already made arrangements for the protection of his devotees. Right? Which is interesting because the indication here is that everything will be arranged for the protection of the devotees, and so therefore there'll be no problems. Well, no, not that there won't be any problems, because there's always problems in the material world. But despite the problems, for the devotee, there will always be protection from the Lord. And that's for any devotee, right? But of course that protection may manifest in different ways. It'd be really good if for all of the obstacles that are created by others in our lives, that the Sudarshan Chakra would come along and just gobble them all up. I'm a devotee, right? And so therefore I deserve the protection of the Sudarshan Chakra. But none of us are expecting the Sudarshan Chakra to come and protect us. Right? But that doesn't mean that there's no protection for the devotees. And of course it will depend on the quality of devotion. And also the devotee's ability to see the Lord's action behind every, very often we just observe or are directly confronted by the events as they present themselves, without observing that behind the movement of everything and everyone is the hand of the Purushena Mahatmana, right? The working of the Supreme Person. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ishvaraha Sarva Bhutanam Hridesh Arjuna Tishtati. I'm controlling everyone, seated within the heart of all persons. So sometimes, without a deep and without a deep understanding and perception of the movements of all of the living entities, it's sometimes hard to appreciate, because we're observing things on the external platform. It's hard to see how Krishna protects his devotees. And of course, Ambarish, the story of Ambarish Maharaj is the archetypical example of protection in a very powerful and demonstrative way. So, Prahlad Maharaj wasn't seeking protection because he's a very humble devotee. But because of his deep devotion. But it's very interesting. Maharaj Ambarish is pretty much he's a very powerful emperor, right? He's a very powerful king. He's the emperor of the whole planet. Maybe even, actually it's described as the emperor of the whole universe. So extraordinarily powerful, but as a devotee, pretty much like us, right? Karo Hare, and I mentioned this many times before. Karo Hare Mandira Majanadishu, right? He would go to the temple. Karo Hare Mandir. This is what we do, right? Is that right? We wouldn't be here now if we didn't. Right? Karo Hare Mandira Maja. And then he would clean the temple. Right? Sweep the courtyard. Clean the toilets. Sweep the paths. Weed the garden. Right? We've got Christian the two Christians actually. Destroying the front garden. Looks like it's amazing how much of a mess you can create out of such a little garden. Right? So Ambarish Maharaj is a deeply absorbed devotee, but in terms of devotional service, just a humble servant, right? He liked to associate with the devotees. He liked to take prasadam. He liked to hear Satkatha, right? Topics. He liked to hear the topics of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, he appears in the pages of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam because of just because of engaging in the basic practices of bhakti. Going to the temple, associating with the devotees, doing service, hearing the katha. So Ambarish Maharaj is a fantastic example, and of course, as a result of his competence as a devotee, and that means when not necessarily being very flashy as a devotee, but engaged in the simple practices of devotional service, then he was fully protected by the Lord. And that's evidenced here. And interesting, Prabhupada says here, a devotee is never fearful of his death. For he meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead always. Right? So he sees even the difficulties and the challenges as an arrangement of Krishna. We tend to see everything from the external platform, but a deeply absorbed devotee like Ambarish Maharaj. And what's his characteristic? What is the characteristic of a devotee? What's major characteristic of a devotee? Raise your hands if you think you know. What is it? Patience and tolerance. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
In all circumstances, he still remains devoted to Krishna.
And so what's he doing? Surrender. Yeah, well, that's certainly the characteristic or the quality of Maharaj Ambarish. But what's Krishna's instruction to the devotees? Think of him. Yes. That's the quality. Manmana, bhavamad bhakto. Think of me, become my devotee. This is a qualification of a devotee. How does he think of Krishna? How many ways can you think of Krishna? What's the first thing? Serve. Yeah. How do we start our service? I just heard a murmur coming out of the crowd. No details. Hands up. What is? Yes. Chanting. Yeah. What is it? Adasi Krishna namadi na bhaved. Anyway, tongue. We start with the tongue. often before chanting we start with honouring prasadam. Is that right? Yeah. But it begins with the tongue, especially with chanting. And by regularly satatam kirtayanto mam, right? The devotees are always glorifying the Lord by chanting. And so, because of the chanting, then they're able to remember Him. Right? The devotee is not necessarily looking for protection, right? In the face of difficulties, although sometimes things become so difficult for a devotee, they're looking for protection. But the quality of a very advanced devotee like Maharaj Ambarish, that he's not looking for anything for himself, right? We were discussing this the other day. Ahoitaki apratihata. The activities of a devotee, an advanced devotee or an advancing devotee, is that the devotee is not looking for any personal benefit for themselves. Apratihata. And the service is uninterrupted. Right? Hoitaki apratihata. So, Prabhupada makes a point here that every devotee is protected by the Lord. Even at the beginning of one's devotional service. Right? Konteya pratijani hi name bhakta pranasyati. So, the protection of Maharaj Ambarish is a given. The protection of all devotees is a given. Because as soon as one starts rendering service to the Lord, then the Lord's protection is available. That's why there's these words at the beginning of the verse, praktishtam, as previously ordained, as previously promised by Krishna. And even though one may not be protected materially or physically, the devotee will always be protected by his internal meditation. So when the devotee is thinking of Krishna, even if the material circumstances are not favourable, still the devotee remembers Krishna. Because that's just that's the natural characteristic of a devotee. Manmana, bhava mad bhakto, think of me, become my devotee. So devotee is automatically protected by that remembrance. So that at the time of departing leaving the body, and of course this is the prime teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, there's no end to the spirit soul. There's no end to one's existence. There may be the end of dehantara, right, the end of the body. But for the soul, because the devotee is thinking of Krishna, then that state he will attain. And of course, depending on the advancement of the devotee, depending on the purity of the devotee, then that will determine the next destination. Right? And of course that's all organized by the Purushena Mahatmana, the Paramatma, right? All orchestrated by the Paramatma. We're all here because of the arrangements of Krishna. Right? We think we're the ones who are doing the arrangements, but actually the arrangements are being orchestrated. Ishvaraha sarvabhutanam hriddesharjuna tishtati. Yeah. Brahmayan sarvabhutani yanchar rudhani mayaya. Yep. So Krishna knows everything. He creates in one sense, the obstacles or the difficulties, the circumstances, but he provides protection for the devotees. In this particular case, especially from the external. It may not happen to all of the devotees, but in this particular case, Maharaj Ambarish is such a powerful, when we say powerful devotee, he was just fixed, like Prabhupada says here, not moved, didn't move an inch, Prabhupada says. Because he was thinking of Krishna all the time. Yep. And so Prabhupada says here, this protection is offered to a devotee even from the very beginning of his devotional service. Konteya pratijanehi name bhakta pranasyati. Right? If one simply begins devotional service, he is immediately protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that protection comes in the form of the association of the devotees. It comes in the form of the sadhu, the guru, and also in the shastra. Right? If we're having some difficulty or there's some problem and we want to understand how and why these things are taking place, then often it's a good idea just to pick up the Bhagavad Gita and read it, right? And then within a very short period of time, we immediately have an understanding of the circumstance, ultimately of the arrangement of Krishna behind everything, right? So it's not that, as I mentioned before, not that everybody's going to have the Sudarshan Chakra come and descend to destroy our enemies. But we're protected by good instruction. Good instructions coming from the devotees, coming from the spiritual master, coming from Krishna in the form of the Shastra, in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is for. Very interesting, actually, how Krishna reveals himself. And also, as we were discussing the other day, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. One of the reasons why we study the Bhagavatam on a daily basis is so that we get that inspiration and that guidance so that we can see Krishna's hand within everything. When the sages of Naimisharanya went to Sutta Goswami, one of the questions they asked him was, where has religiosity gone now that Krishna has left the planet? Right? And the answer by Sutta Goswami was, Krishna is present in the form of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So, and also Prabhupada explains, and the previous acharyas explain, that he is present within the instructions found in the Bhagavad Gita, right? And how, and Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita itself, if one regularly studies the Bhagavad Gita, then he's worshipping me, Krishna says, by the use of his intelligence, right? So the protection is there. It may not be the Sudarshan chakra for us. It's highly unlikely that we're going to be protected by the Sudarshan chakra. Right? It'd be great. It'd be good to have protection of the Sudarshan chakra. We wouldn't have to call the police. Right? But you know, this is a measure of the devotee, of the devotion of Ambarish Maharaj. But anybody, any devotee can remember Krishna by taking shelter of the Bhagavad Gita, by taking shelter of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And thereby always remember, right? Manmana. By chanting Hare Krishna, by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, or by hearing the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Or simply by reading a book. Very simple. You know, the previous acharyas, especially Bhaktivedanta Thakur, appreciated the importance of the printing press, right? And would worship in Calcutta at the one of the temples, one of the preaching centres that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had. He had the printing press next to the altar. And when Srila Prabhupada, an example of that, when the devotees had installed the printing press in the New York temple, Prabhupada was enthusiastic to come and see the printing press, and when he saw the printing press, he offered his obeisances to the printing press. Right? It's just a machine. Right? But the potency of the printing press is that it can duplicate, replicate, and be distributed in a form of books. Right? In the form of literature. and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who's a very advanced devotee, was an expert in publishing. Right? He was a scholar, an astrologer, right? Very learned, but also learned in you know the physical aspects of book publication. And of course, not for the sake of having a nice set of books in his bookshelf, right? We've all probably got a nice set of books in our bookshelf, right? But we're supposed to read them. And more than that, we're supposed to distribute them. Right? This is an act of great self-sacrifice and of great self-realization, actually. Right? You know, when a materialistic people, when they see the devotees doing book distribution, they think they're just trying to make money. Right? Just making money. Business. But no, it's or even prasadam distribution, just feeding people. And of course it is feeding people. And distributing books does make money. But the proper understanding is that this is the distribution of of the mercy of the Lord in the form of prasadam, which is purifying, and in the form of knowledge, which is also purifying. Right? It's to elevate people out of a material conception of life and elevate them to a point of understanding their spiritual identity. Right? We exist on 3 levels. The gross physical, subtle material, and then the pure spiritual. But most people don't have an understanding of the spiritual platform, or the spiritual level of existence. They're just engaged broadly in the material realm. So we have protection from Krishna, not necessarily in the form of the Sudarshan chakra like the greatly fortunate Ambarish Maharaj, but we have protection by the association of the devotees, and by the mercy of the devotees we get the association of Krishna, right? Yasya prasadat, bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan, nagati kutopi. We need the mercy of the devotees first, right? That's Krishna's mercy. When you get the mercy of the devotee, that means you've already got Krishna's mercy. And then by the mercy of the devotee, what do we get? We get Krishna. Right? So we have protection. We are protected. And that's what Prabhupada says here. The Lord is so kind and merciful that He gives the devotee proper guidance and all protection. And thus the devotee very peacefully makes progress. Prabhupada says here, solid progress in Krishna consciousness without outward disturbances. Well, sometimes we have outward disturbances also, but we still make solid progress and not disturbed by the comings and goings of the material energy. There's always going to be a problem. Have you noticed? Well, we got married thinking, this will be the solution to all my problems. What happened? We're not sure. What happened? Yep. And here Prabhupada makes a point at the end of the purport. We may have enemies. Just as a consequence of becoming a devotee, we'll find there's opposition to what we're doing. People will criticize us. People will attack us. Usually out of misunderstanding, out of ignorance. Right? And that's to be understood. That's what happens. The activities of the devotee are like ignorance or darkness to a materialistic person. Right? We rise early at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning to pursue our spiritual development. And the materialist says, go home and go back to bed. Don't disturb me. Right? And so for the activities of the materialistic people from a devotional point of view is darkness. Right? Jeev Jago, wake up, sleeping souls. But of course, the sleeping soul says, turn off the light. Leave me alone. Have you noticed, those who have got children, have you noticed? You want to wake the kids up early in the morning, what do they want to do? Oh, leave me alone. So a devotee is actually almost automatically guaranteed to face opposition in their, as soon as you tell your parents that you're going to the ISKCON temple and chanting Hare Krishna, they're going, oh no. Huh? And maybe not, maybe your parents are pious. There'll be somebody else who'll be giving you a hard time. But that's okay, that's part of, just the part, it's part and parcel of what we do. But we're not disturbed by these. If there's the proper application of bhakti, which means chanting Hare Krishna, it means studying the Bhagavad Gita, it means studying the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which automatically will give us the opportunity or the facility to remember Krishna, be able to see the workings of the material realm for what it is, and re-establishing the focus or our attention on the really important elements of existence, which is to be a devotee. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, which is Krishna's instruction. So that remembrance of Krishna is our protection. That's our Sudarshan chakra in many respects. So, as Prabhupada points out here, even if an enemy of the devotees is very strong, that strength will be easily mitigated, will be easily dealt with by the fire of devotional service, right? This is what we call fired up, right? He's fired up. Krishna protects the devotees who are engaged in devotional service. What is it? Kunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranasyati. Yeah. Even from the beginning we'll be protected. I remember the first Harinam party that I went on. And going on Harinam is powerful. Right? It's immensely purifying because you'll meet challenges. You'll challenge yourself, right? But it was in Adelaide. It was in the spring. September must have been. Yep, around about that time. Because there's the September school holidays, right? And so the devotees decided that we should go to the Wayville showgrounds, because that's where they have the royal show. And so there's a dozen devotees chanting Hare Krishna. But I noticed that the locals were not very enthusiastic about us chanting Hare Krishna. In fact, they were very, very agitated. And fortunately, those people were on the other side of the fence. They were in the they were in the showground itself, inside. But then there was this really agitated guy came walking along. He hit Kripakara and knocked him into the gutter. And then Jammi Jaya was standing in front of me, so he punched him. And I thought, uh-oh, because I was next. And I thought at that time, gosh, what have I got myself into here? And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, a couple of policemen turned up. They grabbed these guys. And so I thought, whoa, that's interesting. Of course, no compensation for Kripakara and Janmijaya. They bore the brunt of this fellow's attack. But I felt good. I felt protected. So Krishna will protect us. And I wasn't a shaved up bhakta then. I wasn't living in the temple, but I was chanting Hare Krishna, fortunately. Well, I was chanting Hare Krishna, obviously, because that's why I was there. Yeah. So Krishna will look after us. Krishna does look after us. Just may not, but we need to ensure that our Krishna consciousness is deep. So that's chanting Hare Krishna and hearing from the right sources. Studying the Bhagavad Gita, studying the Bhagavatam. Very important. And of course, I think devotees here in Melbourne are pretty practiced in such activities. I was in Brisbane last weekend, engaging in some negotiations with the local devotees there, and the devotees were telling me, the best devotees here are the devotees who come from Melbourne. So that was encouraging. And they said, well trained. So we need to, and this is an important element of discipline, right? One is a disciple of the Guru. That means one has to follow the discipline of the spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us, in fact, he teased the devotees here in Melbourne. The devotees think the books are for selling. So Prabhupada said, no, they're not for selling. Well, they are for selling, yes, but they're for studying first and foremost. And if we do that, engage in the process of bhakti, beginning with hearing and chanting, then we'll be protected. Although an enemy of a devotee may be very strong, he is compared to an angry serpent before the fire of devotional service. Yeah. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions on anything we've covered here?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Just a comment, not a question.
That's fine.
All those various types of protections that you mentioned, out of that, especially the sadhu, guru and shastra,
Yep.
that point really stood out. Usually it's just, at least for me, it was thinking that that's how you get the spiritual knowledge, the divine knowledge, but that it's actually giving you protection.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very good point to meditate on. So thanks for highlighting that.
Thank you. Yep. Yes, sadhu, shastra and guru. Shibya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the nice class. You mentioned how remembering Lord Krishna at the time of difficulty or at the time of death can sometimes be difficult. So my
We
question
should remember
is,
Krishna all of the time, but certainly then, yes.
So my question is, does remembrance really have to be with love? Or can it be out of fear? Or can it be just calling out someone's name which is related to Krishna's name?
What was that last couple of sentences?
Does remembrance really have to be like love with love? Or can it be out of fear? Or can it be calling out someone's name?
Out of fear.
Yeah.
Krishna! Well, what does Krishna say in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita? Priti purvakam, right? So there needs to be some affection. And so, a good question. The quality of our remembrance will determine the degree of elevation that we may be transported to or taken to, right? So the answer is yes. Does the quality of our meditation or remembrance determine the outcome? So, if we're just looking for protection, in other words, we're absorbed in our own interest, as opposed to, say, the mood of the Braja Basis, right, and their devotion, especially the devotion of the gopis, who were prepared to give up anything, right? And so whatever Krishna wanted, that's what they wanted. And even we see in the Shastakam prayers of Lord Chaitanya, where he says, if my unhappiness is your happiness, then I'll embrace the unhappiness that makes you happy, right? So that remembrance, that love and deep attachment and attraction to Krishna that's exemplified by the Brajabasis, right, and especially the gopis, that's the recommended remembrance that we're encouraged to cultivate, that an understanding of that. We may not even have that kind of attraction, but we're encouraged to develop that kind of. And so you see in the pastimes of Madhavendra Puri, right? Madhavendra Puri, on his leaving, was meditating on the prayers of Radharani and her lamentation that she couldn't go to Mathura to see Krishna. Krishna had left, but the gopis and the residents of Vrindavan were always thinking of Krishna and they wanted to be with him, right? So Madhavendra Puri was meditating on this verse, and it's a verse of lamentation. And so his disciple, was it Ramananda? No, Ramchandra, who was it? Ramchandra Puri. Yeah, Ramchandra Puri said, quoted the Bhagavad Gita. What was it? Prasanatma what is it? Na sochati na kankshati. Samasaveshu bhuteshu. What is it? Say it loudly. Mad bhaktim labate param. What's the next line? Na sochati na kankshati. Anyway, he said, yes, okay, you should be equal to everybody. You shouldn't be lamenting. And so what did Madhavendra Puri say? Get out of here. I don't want to see your face again, because Ramchandra Puri didn't understand the meditation of Madhavendra Puri, that he wasn't lamenting on the material platform, but he was lamenting in the mood of Srimati Radharani that he couldn't be with Krishna. right? So, you know, it's that kind of deep emotional attraction for an absorption in the loving affairs of the devotees and Krishna that we're encouraged to cultivate or develop. You know, not, oh, there's, you know, I'm going to die, oh, Krishna, save me, right? In other words, save my material situation. But rather, Krishna, let me be your servant wherever you want me to be, right? So the quality of our meditation is certainly going to influence or impact the outcome. And so it's recommended, and even Prabhupada explains, that when we leave this body, our final, or not final destination, but before we go back home, back to Godhead, the devotee is transported to that place where Krishna is performing his pastimes, still in the material world, but in the association of his eternal associates, so that it's like the finishing school, right? And in the association of the residents of Brajadam, of Gokul, we associate with the devotees in that environment, and so the perfection of that deep attachment and affection for Krishna is established, and that's the last birth. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
How close are you to that? Huh? No? Huh? Going back to school on Tuesday? Yeah. Then we'll be worrying about what's going on at school. Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
You gave us the example of how you got protected when that angry person was punching your fellow friend. But
that was just a material protection.
Yeah. It's for us. It's easy to see when we get protected.
When
we get protected, it's obvious that we know we get protected physically.
Yeah.
But can you give us some examples of where you actually didn't get protected? Physically didn't get protected, but we are meant to think that Krishna has got a different plan, but how the unprotection actually turned out to be a protection in the long run. Do you have any such experience?
Many circumstances, yeah. And sometimes it's just, becoming a little bit more mature as a devotee. You know, we tend to be a bit fanatical sometimes. And that's not always good, right? And so as a consequence of our fanaticism, we discover, ooh, I made a mistake in dealing with someone, right? And so we have to learn from those experiences. Or we do learn from those experiences, even in our mistakes. So that protection will manifest in ways that we couldn't imagine. Yeah. And specific examples, I can't think of anything right now. Sorry. Many examples. Yeah. Okay, anything else? I think we should finish here. Granthara Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Hare Krishna.